Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Emily Hopun Squax, Waach Elkstwin, the Kamloops Art Gallery. My name is Emily Hope. I'm the Education and Public Programs Director here at the Kamloops Art Gallery. I'd like to take a minute before we start to situate ourselves. The concept of here is a bit funny in these virtual gatherings, but for myself and those of you joining us from the regions surrounding the gallery, here is to Kamloops Utluch. I've introduced myself in Secwepemchin because that's the language of this land. What we refer to as Kamloops and beyond, spanning over 180,000 square kilometers across the interior plateau of what we call British Columbia, is Secwepem Utluch, the territory of the Secwepem people. It is an immense privilege to be a guest on these lands, and I'm so grateful to my teachers, Jessica Arnoose and Sunny Prairie Chicken, for continuing to make space for me in their classrooms, for their generosity, guidance, and patience. I'm joined today by curator Makiko Hara and artist Tomoyo Ihaya, with technical support in the background from the lovely folks at Collective Broadcast. Our program today will be about an hour in duration and will include some time at the end for questions and conversation. You can submit your questions through the Q&A box, and you're also encouraged to chat amongst yourselves and with us through the chat window. Note that you can choose to send a message to all panelists or to all panelists and attendees, which will be a chat with everyone there. I'll begin now by reading a very brief biography to introduce you to Makiko Hara, who will then offer an overview of the exhibition, whose stories, and introduce Tomoyo Ihaya. Hi, Makiko. Makiko Hara is an independent curator, lecturer, researcher, writer, and art incubator. Born in Tokyo, Japan, and based in Vancouver, her principal focus has been creating platforms for dialogue and exchange between artists in Canada, Asia, and beyond. Co-founder of Tokyo Art Speak, Hara was chief curator of Centre A in Vancouver from 2007 to 2013, and has since worked independently on numerous solo and group exhibition projects in Canada and Japan. In 2019, Hara co-founded the Pacific Crossings Curatorial Initiative, with whom she has organized research residencies, lectures, and forums with partner organizations in Tokyo, Manila, and Hong Kong. Hara has also been working on a long-term research project, Kitchen Talks, Women Aging and Art Making, and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, she opened My Kitchen Anthropology Museum in her own apartment in 2020. Thank you so much for joining us today, Makiko. I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for Tomoyo and Scott and Collective Broadcast to organize this. And thank you for everyone attending this online talk. It's really a great pleasure to have this opportunity to talk with individual artists and sharing their stories with you all through this online talk. And I briefly, before I introduce today's speakers, Tomoyo, I briefly talk about my exhibition, but before, first, I really want to thank to the whole team of Kamloops Art Gallery. First and most, Charles Neville, the chief curators, who invite me to guest curated of this exhibition about 2 years ago. And over the 2 years with this pandemic, things being shifted and we've been discussed so much and we changed a lot. And it was very challenging, but over the course, Cheryl encouraged me to move forward and then finally make it happen with amazing team of Kamloops Art Galleries, Director Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, for having me. And just name Hugh, Christina, Matthew, and Garnet, Emily, and Craig, and more that who make it happen. And also, I really thanks to all artists who participate for this show, and in the very complex conditions that usually I work with an artist together at the site and commission or making works together. But this was very challenge for me that I have to work in remote, and the absence of the artist was very uneasy, but they share many thoughts through online and emails and studio visit. And so I'm really grateful to present your work in this very specific times of during the pandemic. The food story, I originally thinking very different things. And so, and then perhaps the most of the audience today in this talk have may not opportunity to see the show. So I just asked that this kind of briefly a slideshow of these exhibitions while I'm talking about food story. But I don't go to the details. And so this project, while I've been thinking of this project as a newcomer immigrant, I moved to Canada in 2007, become a curator at Center A, where it's located in downtown East Side in Vancouver. Thinking of and then working on many Asian artists from Canada, local, national, and international. So it's been challenging to bring all different story of those artists. I've been thinking of how the artworks is conveyed and then passed on to the different kind of culture and message in a very distinguished language of visual art. But many of them are bringing of their personal lived experience. And I wanted to do bring some Asian stories. And then over the course of preparing this show, the pandemic started. And it was really shifting of a way of thinking in many ways that, first of all, that we can't bring the artist. So it's been shifting of the ideas. But in the same way, in our lockdown situation, we got to know more about many issues in different parts of the world. And it's happened to many friends in my own country and in its place in different places. And so we realized at the to thinking and of those global pandemic situation is so interrelated. And where I am in Canada, that the same times of this pandemic, there's a lot of issues about the Indigenous truth and reconciliations, which started to happen in the unmarked graveyard in Kamloops residential school. Many things that I have learned in the past 15 years as immigrant, being very much rooted and to think opportunity to my own colonial history as Japanese. So I wanted to bring a parallel story that each artist share of their personal story rooted of their colonial history, but also their families, interwoven generations, and it's kind of lived experience of their own to think about these issues in the global issue that we're facing in many ways, political and environmental. It's as interrelated subject. And I hope that the exhibition's food story is open up the kind of questions, how we can reflect of other people's story as to think about imagining and think about our own and open up to share, to change our way of living. So for today, I'm very happy to introduce Tomoyo Ihaya, who is based in Vancouver, Canada. Tomoyo has been making art and traveling around the world. I met Tomoyo in 2006, prior to my move to Vancouver in 2007 as a new immigrant, and have been a great friend since, and enjoy seeing her development of the art making over the last 15 years. For me, her works would be best described with the word empathy and compassion for all lives on the earth. After studying German literature and Eastern philosophy at Rikkyō University in Japan, Tomoyo moved to Canada and studied printmaking and received her MFA at University of Alberta. Since 2005, she has been intensively visiting Ladakh and Dharamusala in India, where it's also called Delhi to Tibet, over the 16 times in the last 15 years. And it became her second home. Using various mediums and methods such as print, drawing, painting, installation, and animations, Tomoyo has created numerous artworks on the Tibetan philosophy, Ninja, of which she will speak more in her talk today, I believe. The works in whose stories in Kamloops Art Gallery, which is showing us right now, its drawing come from the series of drawings from Dharamusala and the series called Eye, Water, Fire, which is an ongoing project that she have been working over a decade and presented in Canada, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and Mexico. Those series of artworks are her artistic response and, in her word, a healing process for her devastations to the ongoing issue of human rights of Tibetan peoples and beyond. The drawing also speaks to the self-immolations protests of Tibetan peoples to the Chinese government occupying their homeland and its oppressions of Tibetan people's culture and religions. Based on her deep examination of human life cycle from the birth to death and its relationship to the nature, she has continued to making a portrait of Tibetan people who sacrifice their lives for their belief and homeland. Tomoyo doesn't insist those political statements loudly, but rather we could feel that she has nestled close to the peoples by sharing her life with them in everyday actions of eating and living together. Tomoyo's artworks reminds us of her compassion and love for the people, those who are suffered by the wave of social and political problems, but still continue to live humbly and devotedly. I see her works comes from a critical view on the ongoing social problem of today's in the 21st century, such as human rights, racial discriminations, environmental crisis, and human greed in our present global consumer society, which is deeply rooted to our colonial past, but also it's a big universal issues. In the last few years, Tomoyo has been traveling and working in Korea and Taiwan in examining of the complex colonial history, of which I asked her to present in this new project in her talk today as well. How to locate herself presenting the other's story in such a context must be very challenging because it's related to our cultural identity as Japanese, as a descendant of the oppressors, which is also reflecting my motivation for these exhibitions at large. So I'm grateful to present her works in my exhibition, Whose Story, and this is my great pleasure to invite Tomoyo today to share your story and open the conversation with an audience. Tomoyo?
Yep.
Are you here?
Yep.
Hi.
Hello.
I pass on to you.
Hello. Thank you, Makiko-san, for introducing who I am and what I'm doing. So I don't have to explain myself. And I like to extend my huge thank you to Makiko Hara, the curator, who invited me and to be included in this food stories show. And everybody at Kamloops Art Gallery, although I couldn't go to install, everybody at Kamloops Art Gallery put the best effort to install all what I sent, and I really thank you for doing it. And I really thank you for Emily and Scott for being here and instructed me how to do all this. And because we have, did I miss anything? Okay. So because we have limited time, I composed an image of about 35 to show the footages of my journeys, including a group of works that's been presented at Food Stories and Taiwan and Korea. And Makiko made a good point. It's been, I have to make some point about it. So let's start my PowerPoint presentation. Do people see it? Do people see it?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay. So, oops, I'm missing one. So first is 2005 to 2011. As Makiko said, I started going to India to do meditation in a remote monastery in Ladakh, which is under Tibetan cultural territory, but which was part of India. So it wasn't invaded at the Communist Party in 1959, like Tibet. And I also had artist in residence in Bhopal, central India. So my first trip was to Ladakh and Bhopal in India. And this is a map which is not updated. Last time I went to India is before pandemic, so 2019. And Makiko said more than 15 times, but when I counted, I've been there 22 times. And I don't know how I did it, but this is how many times I went to India up to 2010. And then this is the Indus River and the Zanskar River meeting point in Ladakh. So Ladakh is high up in the Himalaya, and once I went to there, something clicked. And then another good thing now is I become really sick. And because I become very sick, I become close to local people. They took care of me and a couple other people who become also very sick. And then also I met a Tibetan, I become friend with Tibetan agent who organized our meditation trip. So after that, I just started going to Ladakh because something was there. Then gradually, I made a project, or maybe it's naturally occurred project, that I started documenting water-related people's scene, because water being my theme, because it represents it's metaphor of life. It doesn't stop, it's not permanent. We all have water in our body. Without water, we cannot live. So my approach was to capture people filling up water in a plastic tank, which sounds like contradictory, but without container, you cannot hold water. So it was also metaphor for our mind. If we don't have a capacity, we cannot fulfill our lives, the quality of life. if the container is upside down or cracked, which is our mind, we cannot see aspiration of life. So these pictures to me had so many messages. And then I also videotaped so many people hitting water or pumping water. And this is the how do you call, still shot from the video called Water Song I made in 2007. So my theme started rather more philosophical, water as the essence of the life, and contemplate on cycle of living and dying. This is always containers in my picture with my close family friend. And this is also containers. Food was also very important theme as a symbol of offering. So I made a video, I took many pictures, and I made lots of mixed media drawings. And this is one of the large paintings I made based on my visit in Ladakh. And it depicts a cycle of living and dying. And the girl lying in a river island, for example, is actually real experience of me being in a huge flood that happened in Ladakh in 2010 that killed over 800 people. I stayed and volunteered to do any physical work with local people. And I saw the body of a little girl. So I had to draw her. Excuse me. And to add, before I go to Dharamusala, drawing from Dharamusala, it's important that while all these some years, first years, I also become very close to Tibetan people, especially senior people. I call them grandmother, grandfather, father or mother, who told me many stories of their life in exile, stories of escape, and mythology or the sentiment around water in Tibet. And I recorded from them around the same time. So you can remember that I knew many Tibetan people by 2012. And then I talk about works that are included in this food storage show. It's called Drawings from Dharamusala series. And Dharamusala is the capital of a Tibetan community in exile in India, where all the governmental bodies and His Holiness Dalai Lama also lives there. And that's where you get all the news about Tibet, and everything happens there. Also, there are many, many settlements of Tibetan people throughout India. And this is the picture of one of the Tibetan elderlies I become close to, who passed away, unfortunately, some years ago without going back to her own country. Everybody called her Ranchen Momo. And Ranchen means independence. She was like a fierce protester. And I'm not going to talk about political issue in Tibetan community in exile. Some people want to full independence. Some people want to go middle way. So they don't mind autonomy. And I don't get into it, because my hope as a non-Tibetan is for everybody to go back to Tibet and peacefully and have a freedom that they deserve. So whatever works, I hope. Someday the day comes when many people don't have to die like her in a foreign land. But anyway, these people are very kind, very very smiley, have a great sense of humor, and they meet strangers like me, and they just said, "Oh, I feel like I met you before. Why don't you come for tea to my home?" There are people like that, and even they may not have so much money, they share. So this is the Tibetan word, ninje. Makiko mentioned a little bit. And for people who can read Chinese or Japanese, there's a translation in the bottom. And this is used often in the conversations when they said, oh, one said, oh, so and so broken leg, oh my gosh. And then the other said, oh, ninja, oh, ninja. And it said, I feel his pain. So ninja is more like, they use often in the conversation, but it feels like they are saying, oh my gosh, I feel your pain. I'm sorry that you have to go through. I feel your pain. And this word become true teaching to me through being with these people, Tibetan elderlies who are first generation, who escaped hard journey from Tibet to India after 1959. And it's become motivation probably for me to have more empathy with what happened to them rather than me just studying meditation. So I'm so sorry. The trigger to start what I call drawings from Dharamusala, basically it's a drawing related with a self-immolation protest, which started in 2009 in Tibet as a form of extreme protest to express freedom and peaceful resolution in Tibet. This is I knew about it, but I didn't do much about it. I just felt very sad. But one day, 2012, January, I was in Puri, Orissa, the east coast of Kolkata, and I was at the cyber cafe checking Tibetan social political news online. And I came across with a picture of the monk engulfed in a frame. It was a report of breaking news of somebody again self-immolated in India, in Tibet. So when that happened, somebody in Tibet takes risk to document him protesting, to send all the information as much as possible to exile side in India, the news comes out. But what happened then was when I look at that picture of somebody engulfed in a frame, I start shaking. My hands are trembling like this. And then my whole body was like this, as if I had a breakdown. And I even felt some kind of heat. So what I did was I rushed back to my room, which was also my studio. And this is the first drawing I made without thinking anything. I just had to make it because it was unbearably painful. So after that, something told me, inside of me said, well, you go to Dharamusala, just, do something about it. So I changed my travel plan. The shortened my visit in Bhopal. I went to Dharamsala. And then this is a studio I rent from my friend Tanka painter, Tibetan traditional painter's studio. I rent had a little bunk bed to sleep in. And this year, 2012, was the peak of self-immolation protest. So I stayed 2 months in spring. I went back to Vancouver. I went back again from September till January in 2013. So over 6 months, I stayed in Dharamusala. And this is one of the drawings that I started and completed in Vancouver. And these two images, 4 rivers and 6 mountains, and the crossing mixed media on wooden panel. They are in a show. And so I'm showing for people who cannot come to visit the gallery in person. So I made these big works, but at the same time, I started making one drawing for each person whenever I heard, because in May it was on increase. And whenever I see the news, I could visualize the person if it comes with a photo especially. And when I read the story, image would come up. So I thought, this is what I can do. I can draw one each for one lost life as a tribute. So in Dharamusala, this is an image of a flyer. When somebody dies, the local organization make this little flyer, print it out, announce there will be vigil for so and so who self-immolated. And then around 6, 7 or 5:30, people gather with candles and they go circumambulation. I don't know if you know this word. So it's walking clockwise. It's a term for pilgrimage. For Tibetan way, they go 3 times in a big group, reciting a specific prayer, which I memorized because I went to so many vigils. I didn't miss any vigil while I was in Dharamusala. And then they gather and they pray further. And then they leave candle together. That's how Tibetan vigil goes. So my routine in Dharamusala, especially after September, I have this drawing kit that I carry around in my backpack too. If I hear news in the middle of a street, I can go to cafe and start drawing. So I had this kit. It's kind of like an amateur journalist. And then I draw in a few hours. I read the story, I see the picture. If I don't see picture, I still draw. And it's not about outcome. It's not about technical, it's not about the quality of art. It was about the process that I finished in a few hours. I didn't care much about outcome. Then I finished drawing and then I rushed into the cyber cafe owned by Tibetan man. And we become friends over time because I appeared in a cyber cafe and said, well, can you scan this, please? Can you scan this, please? And then after I get it scanned, I post it on a Facebook or a social media, which took me great courage for me because nobody wants to see very sad or brutal news. And many people who live in other countries, they may not want to take it. But I thought, well, they sacrificed their life for world to know what is happening in their country. And they are expressing freedom, this freedom of speech, freedom of what they think, freedom of their, expressing their culture is like air and water. Nobody can live without it. And they showed it in a most painful way. So rather than judging, I really wanted to do something to show my empathy, my mourning feeling. And I wanted the world to know that, see, in other part of the world, this is happening. People are struggling. So these are the group of the images I made for each person, but sometimes 3 people are in one drawing because in November especially, there are 23 self-immolations in 2012. And we hear 3 news. And then I couldn't do for one person each, so I put them all together because they're all teenagers. They didn't know each other, but I put them together like that. But these drawings, now I counted before I left Canada, I have over 200. Right now, there are 165 self-immolation people who passed away. Or even few survived, they don't have a free life. At the same time, I made series of a mixed media installation called Eyes, Water, Fire. And these symbols come deeply influenced from my experience with the Tibetan people who told me the story of the escaping in the icy mountains, or reading stories or reading poems. And my memory of the video of many faces whose eyes, very sad eyes, and sometimes crying, and I was crying too. And all this candlelight. So eyes, water, fire represent what I experienced in Dharamusala. And the frame is frame of self-immolation protesters, but also frame is our will, our passion, our belief. And I don't have picture of the frame in here, but you see it in other drawing. And then now I shift Taiwan and Korea. And I, again, like me, I didn't know I would have gone to India for 22 times in 16 years. And I didn't imagine to become so close to Tibetan people in exile. I wouldn't have imagined me doing rather, at the result, my drawing for protester become political. Also, it was my personal tribute, my personal empathy to each of them as if they are my brothers or sisters or grandmothers or grandfathers or fathers or mothers or neighbors or friends. This Taiwan and Korean affair is pretty similar. So out of blue in 2016 and 18, I was contacted by Taiwanese professor, and 2018 was a Korean writer. And they contacted me because they also had a human rights concern over self-immolation protest in Tibet. It was, well, you know, covered often, but it wasn't, it's disappeared. It didn't appear as much. And it's same we can see whenever some turmoil happens in other country, we hear it for a while, but then we stop hearing it. It's happening now too. So then while they are following it, they found my drawings. So Professor Lai in Taiwan wanted to write a research paper analyzing symbolism in my drawing. And then as we talk, she said, I will organize the exhibition. You want to come? I will organize it. And she did everything for me. So that was the beginning. And then in 2008, Makiko organized, curated a show in Tokyo on theme of empathy and compassion. And then the Korean writer, Mr. Yeonju Jin, contacted me, and he came all the way from Korea to see it. And then we are talking jokingly. I said, it would be nice if we can share this in Korea too someday. And then he said, oh, okay. So he organized the exhibition in the same year when Makiko curated this show. So I ended up to go to Taiwan in 2017, and then Korea in 2018. So it just came out of blue. And this is a poster from the 2007 drawing from Dharamusala exhibition at the National, now it's a longer name, but then National Chao Tung University Art Center in Tsu City, Taiwan. And then what I wanted to say was I hadn't gone to Korea nor Taiwan till these years as a tourist because I learned about colonial history by Japanese militant government before and during World War II. And since I was young, I felt quite remorse about that. So I didn't want to go either country as a happy-go-round tourist only. So this was good for me to go with purpose to share the universal human rights content. And it was good for me to go because these two trips, I explained about Taiwan first and then Korea. These trips made me realize there were more struggles after Japanese militant government left Taiwan and Korea in 1945. They had much further suffering after too. I wouldn't have known if I didn't go there. Then in 2019, another organization who happened to, the director happened to see my art video, which is at the food story show, Eyes, Water, Fire, saw that video and he invited me to be artist in residence on their Freedom Festival. This organization is promoting culture and democracy. So the given theme was about Taiwanese democratic struggle and against this dictatorship suffering, most commonly known 228 and White Terror. So this is the title and idea that I had for this exhibition. And 228 is, I just read this one because I don't want to give wrong information. So this print is called Horrifying Inspection by Huan Rongkang, who was executed later because of this political print. A print depicts an incident of anti-government uprising by civilians on February 28, 1947, and the brutal massacre of protesters by Kuomintang government force led by Chiang Kai-shek. It is said 18,000 to 28,000 people killed. And after that, the same government applied martial law, which lasted 38 years and 57 days. And this is called White Terror period. And so many people, anti-government people, intellectuals, those arrested, tortured, or disappeared, executed secretively. I had no idea this was how Taiwan was. So what I made was, rather than doing more literal, kind of, I cannot really express in a brutal, impactful forms. It's maybe because I grew up in a rather mild environment. What I decided was to make Taiwan with eyes again, to represent all the people who were killed and who sacrificed their lives for democracy, or the younger people who are strongly standing up for freedom. And then white lanterns are called sky lantern. People put wishes and they fly them into the sky. And this is it's called Worship Become a Peace Ship. Same concept. And the base ship is a plastic model warship that I find at the flea market in England. It came all the way to Taiwan after Canada. And then also I was introduced to this prominent democratic protest activist called Nylon Chen. And I had opportunity to visit the Memorial Museum in Taipei, where he immolated. This office is part of the museum, so you can visit. He self-immolated on April 7th in 1989 in support of a freedom of speech. So police are coming up to his office to arrest him, and he shut the door in and he self-immolated. I was in shock that there are people other than Tibet who expressed that in, who have done self-immolation protests, because it just, to me, it's beyond my imagination that anybody has will to do that. But when I went to this office, I just felt the heaviness of the freedom, and I sat for a while in front of his office. And then this is what came out. It's called Reverse. So there's a big sky lantern with many holes that I made with volunteer people who are all activists for freedom. And I hung this like object and hung all the sperm-like things, but it's more like a symbol of the little life. And then at the bottom, I set this paper, which has kind of burnt field and all the flower of a sprout coming from burnt field. So these are what I created in a short time after learning more about the 228 and the white terror and the nylon chain. And I have lots more to learn. And then now it's about Korea. So this is the exhibition organized by Mr. Yeonju Jin in 2018. And he talked to director of the Aha Gallery in Gwangju. So I went to Gwangju, and again, I didn't know about Gwangju's democratic struggle history. So first show was what I showed at the Wakayama Art Museum with Makiko in Tokyo. I brought these works and again showed Eyes, Water, Fire, the video, which is shown at the Kamloops Art Gallery. And when I went to there, I met so many new friends who experienced directly or indirectly of this 1980 huge democratic protest led by students and civilians. They lost some friends. And they took me to this cemetery before I left. And this is a cemetery for people who died in protest or later who self-immolated to express freedom, or they were killed by arrest, by doing any political protest. So it's very similar to, it's all human. So what I realized was each country, which is democratic now, have all this heavy history. And this is, I can talk this later, but I realized that all this democratic struggle or dictatorship came as a result of colonization too. So I felt really heavy by visiting this cemetery. And one person explained about some people who died. And by the time I finished the tour, I was really beaten up like this. I couldn't recover. Then I offered, I talked to them. I said, well, I like to do something about it. Maybe I make drawing-based animation. And then there are many musicians there. So they said, okay, we support that. We can do sound. So I decided to make something out of this direct experience about Gwangju democratic uprising. So this is archival photos from 1980. So this many people are gathering, and they were gathering asking for election reform and democratic reform against the dictator government. And I went to this press so many times, just felt the history whenever I went to there. And this is a scene of the government-led army coming in and arresting all the students. And this is coffins of the victims are carried to get buried. And this must be the picture that I showed in the beginning of the cemetery. So in 2019, 1 year after I had exhibition in Gwangju, there are 2 exhibitions organized. And besides the animation, I made a series of works. So, and then exhibition happened in Cheonan City. And another, this is a poster in Cheonan City. And then one was in Gwangju. It's called the City of Life, because City of Light. Because Gwangju in Chinese character means light, states of light. So that was the title of the exhibition. And these are some, two drawings out of 5 that I composed for this exhibition. And I draw them on flower paper. It's for ondoru room, and it's a kind of self-heating traditional Korean room, which has a flooring of oil-soaked paper, layers of it, like made it into flour. And then bottom, they used to put heated stone or charcoal, and the whole room become like a very, very warm, cozy space. I used this flower paper because when people can gather in ondoru room, warm heated room, that's when people, the life is not in threat. They don't need to worry about getting shot or attacked. And this is another piece I made for the exhibition. It's called Gwangju Aichogapo. And Aichogapo is Korean traditional curated work that people used make, people still do make, but they make for decoration, covering food or covering mattresses. And it's part of their aesthetics. Actually, I've been a big fan of Korean Aichogapo since I was in high school. Although I never went to Korea for that. So for this exhibition, I wanted to make Aichogapo as a symbol of people's everyday life and to express the community, but with all antique paper. And 2 things coming out, it represents kind of river of the life, but I cannot really explain because I usually make it and maybe some years later, I don't know why I do it. Then this is called Aichogapo, same concept as my big Taiwan map, eyewitnessing, praying, mourning, all that and put together as a collective consciousness. And this one is also at Kamloops Art Gallery now. And then last images are the series of journal-like drawing I made while doing a residency in Gwangju. And it's about past stories and people I met in my everyday life, like small eateries, auntie or poet, or my favorite aunties that I spend the time at the public bath, or drunk men. And I used blue and green as a natural choice because May, Gwangju is full of green. And in that May, all the tragedy happened. Over, they don't know the number, but over 200 people killed. And I enclosed this brief presentation with image of the butter lamps at the main temple in Dharamusala. People offer these butter lamps when somebody dies because their belief is between new life and present life and the next life. There's an intermediate period. It's called bardo. So somebody dies, he's thrown away to all this intermediate realm, and to show him right path, to have a right rebirth, we offer butter lamps to light up his right path. So these lamps and candlelight are kind of pillar in my heart. I live with them. So I wanted to share this with you at last. And this is my presentation, and I'm gonna let Makiko to ask me some questions and from audience. So thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk too much.
Thank you, Tomoyo.
Did I overtime? I'm so sorry if I did.
If we have only 5 minutes left.
Oh no! No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. That was very touching, and it's very deep and very heavy in a way. I remember that, I don't know, but before I start, maybe I should ask Emily how long we have. How should we?
We go 5 more. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh,
No, it's great.
It was so great, Tomoyo.
I'm
Seriously.
sorry.
We have a couple of questions in the chat, and I know, Makiko, you wanted to ask some questions. So why don't we take another 15 minutes?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I just make it brief. And I remember that when you start working on Dharamusala's drawings, and so as the Korean and Taiwanese series in recent years, you were very taking personally, and you got sick, and it's not surprised because you absorb so many pain from others. But I see your works as an act of resilience as well, in a way, in such a tragic situation, but people still maintain their life. And then also you respect of the dignity of peoples in your own way. And I found, and especially the works that you presented in Kamloops, from Eyes, Waters, Fires, that's the drawing of eye, thousands of eye. You put the incense burning and making a hole, and it's a kind of, as I imagine that is also your healing process of the thinking of peoples about, but in the same time, that's some sense of resilience or hope from out of the situations. I want to ask you to about this, that kind of how to making your art practice into shifting up to that, the things. I was thinking to ask you about what is the situation right now, because I forgot to mention that Tomoyo is joining us from her hometown and home, parents' place, as from Japan, but also she's waiting for going to Taiwan for her residency, which was scheduled, but it's still waiting. So that there's this COVID situation been changing all our relationship with other peoples, and as you feel of those many peoples in Tibetan exile, or that in Korea or Taiwan that you very close to collaborate, is that COVID situation shift or change of your way of making art? The two things.
First question is how I shift all the experience into artwork. Was it?
Or some your concept of ninja also, that your art making is somehow that we feel the sense of resilience as well.
So see, you, Makiko, we talked about the degree of pain and empathy. You said we cannot understand somebody's pain 100%. But what I was thinking, I thought about it, and it's true. I'm not resilient. These people are resilient, right? They went through so much suffering and still show the act of compassion like that. And mentality of 17 years old girl, you know, putting herself on a fire, story like that. What I'm doing is nothing. I grew up in such a, I call it a mild hot bus generation, because unfortunately, I see this is one of the facts I realized that the reason I grew up in a rather rich environment in terms of material economically is because after World War II, Japan recovered very quickly, and partially because of Korean War too. We benefited from providing stuff for Korean War. I didn't know really till last summer when I made work for another museum in Seoul. But what I feel is, yes, we cannot understand somebody's pain 100%, but by training or by the degree of our personal experience, if we have more painful experiences, our degree of empathy might get greater, because, we all have this, I was asking Scott and Emily if they know, we are composed of like 37 billions or trillions of cells in one body, right? So some cells must have some collective consciousness, collective memory of the pain and compassion. We might have been together before. So more cells, if we can activate to feel others' pain, and then if we have a mean to express that, like a fine art or music or performance or singing or anything, that's how we can show our resilience. And again, from point of contemporary fine art or anything, sure, the quality of art is very important to me, but it's also very subjective. But I think it's most important is how honest and resilient, how it is from direct experience. And that is very important for me to make art. I like beautiful things too, but or well executed one. But before does it have a heart and this shared molecular movement, stuff like that? I don't know if I answered your question well. But then the latter question you asked me about being stuck because of the pandemic. Lee Hanyo Hanyol Memorial Museum asked me to make one piece on the theme of North and South Korea's unification, about peaceful resolution through one activist who passed away last year. So I had to study history of Korean War. And which I really had close to nervous breakdown, because I felt I was criminal. But again, Japan colonized Korea and messed up and left, and they had more suffering after. But anyway, they asked me same question. What do you think about not having that freedom to travel freely in COVID? How do you connect with other people in other countries? So I answered, this was a good opportunity for me to imagine the situation of the people who had to leave their homeland and they cannot go back. So the first time for you, Makiko, and me, right? Who couldn't move, who couldn't go back to see our families. And I realized, wait a minute, this is everyday life. So most of my friends, right? And I thought, so I shouldn't get depressed about it because this is their normal.
Mm.
And this is like wartime.
Mm.
We become, but no, much less than wartime, but this is how it is. So I felt even we cannot move, I still feel like that because I cannot enter Taiwan or Korea for my research right now. But once we are connected, we are connected. Even without this technology, we are still connected. Because they must feel about their families every day. They cannot reach by phone because it's dangerous. But they think each other and they know they are thinking of each other. So this actually gave me more resilience to deal with it. So even I cannot go to Taiwan, I still have things that I can do. Maybe there's more things in Japan to research like that. So this is how I take it. I don't say it's easy for everybody. We are in the same boat. So what to do, write more letters, send the packages.
Okay, I think it's if we have to finish in 7:15, maybe one more question. And I think it's now your answers might related to the question, very beautiful questions from Charo that we share, it's shared in the Q&A. Should I read or Emily, can you read?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So Charo says, the idea of home is a strong theme throughout the exhibition. In your body of work, the extent to which people will protest for their homeland is so moving. Makiko and Tomoyo, can you both elaborate on this idea of home and why it resonates so profoundly? How might home have different meanings in Western and Eastern contexts? And do you think that we in the West, our audiences here, can understand the contexts raised in your work and in the exhibition as a whole?
Whoa.
Well, do you want to start, Tomoyo, or should I start?
You can start.
Okay. Well, briefly, I think, thank you, Charo, for bringing that. Yeah, very key concept of home is a very key concept of whose story, and throughout the exhibition, that's the word home play in a very multiple and complex roles in the food story. But as Tomoyo said, that I mean, like we are all in a very restricted situation, but it's this COVID conditions over almost 2 years inform us that there's a lot of other peoples that even cannot go to their home as exile, or they lost their home, so many different things. So that meaning of home been shifted so much over this pandemic for me. And then it's also very important keep your concept of home in your own mind and soul, who you connected to and who you care and all those things too. So it's very interesting that you raised this question. And I think it's this sense, it doesn't have Eastern Western concept. And I think it's more kind of universal sense that we start to sharing this, the circumstance, politics, all those things that you were surrounded, and we think of imagine of other people who are different place. And I hope that this exhibition and through that works that we can address that and open up this kind of question effectively. I hope that answers. But I think Tomoyo has more intimate sense.
I have a similar idea as Makiko expressed. Since I'm out of my own, birth country more than 20 years now, and then I spend so much time in India, my sense of home is kind of
Divided, no?
yeah, no, it's not borderless.
Borderless.
It's very funny. I was told by my mother, "Oh, you are like rootless weed." And weed not for this one, just weed as a weed. weed as a weed. Don't take another meaning. And I just imagined me kind of floating like a jellyfish. But that's good because home is kind of borderless. I consider home is here. And whenever you have a home here, we are all the same human, we are all interconnected. And connected by this 37 billions cells. And we can hear this sound of puchi puchi puchi. So if we go through meeting with people with our aspiration and empathy, that's become our home. I may not have a stable home, but that's okay. Because home is where we are needed. If I can be service, it's my home. And, home for me is to keep making art too. Because also I associate with many people, we need this community. But to make art, I have to be in a solitude. It's a long path, but for anybody who has a path, who find a path, it's a solitude. But we have this bigger community that, we support a kind of parallel rather than getting too infantile. That's also home. Because there's so many, it's up to you how you define home. And then once you decide that home is like this, your immediate loved ones or the community that you work with, the community you do meditation with, it's become really rich, I think. And again, west to east, there might be some difference because of different tradition in a family ethics and morality, but it really depends on individual, I think, as Makiko says. I hope I answered the question too.
I think it's true. It's great. And I think we don't have enough time, but I'm really grateful for Emily to hosting and organizing this talk, because since this COVID and then organizing exhibitions, I really wanted to have artist voice in the show. And in some way, although that I couldn't invite artists to Kamloops, but in the same time, we can share your thought and voice into more globally online. So, and then this recorded video is going to be presented in the gallery and online later. But thank you, Tomoyo, for sharing such a deep thought, and it's grateful to hear all those your empathy and philosophy behind all your works. And
I really thank you too to everybody.
And then start up this talk series, which is continue over the next 2 months. I think that's
very, very. It's one good thing about a pandemic. We can get connected like this.
That's right. That's right. And I wish you can go to Taiwan soon and to meet again with your another family over there.
Food.
So I pass back to Emily, and thank you for joining us tonight for all people who are online.
I echo everything you just said, Makiko. Thank you both so much for your time and your wonderful thoughts tonight. I'm going to pop a link in the chat. This will take you to the publication that accompanies.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
I'll give you, some more of Makiko's words, writing about the artists and the works in the exhibition. If you go to our website, kag.bc.ca, you can see all of those nice images that were shared earlier, and you can sign up for our e-newsletter so that you can find out about all of the other talks that are happening. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe. and stay happy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.